My father introduced me, and now it's my son's turn. Woodworking is a passion we'll share forever. Woodcraft understands that. Their people know the right tool for the job, and they make sure we understand how to use it. Their help? It means a lot. Woodcraft knows how we feel because they feel the same way. You know, I enjoy sharing my secrets, and now Jake's teaching me some things too. Woodcraft, helping you make wood work.
Tight Bond Wood Glues, the pro's advantage.
Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of I Can Do That. I'm your host, Chad Stanton, and today we're going to be making this cabinet. We're calling it our Country Corner Cabinet. It's a little bit different because the side pieces are actually the back, and they come together at 90 degrees. Now these pieces, this is plywood, and the rest of it, it's some pine, and pine is going to be really easy to work with for us. Some other features to the cabinet are we have the bullnose and a cove molding. We're going to be adding this arc to it, or arch. It has shelves that are adjustable. As we come down, we repeat that bullnose and that cove molding to match the top. And then on the inside, now we have a fixed shelf in it. And the feature that I like the most on this, well, it's an inset door, which means the door is flush with the face frame. Now this sometimes can be tricky to do because you want to make sure that your gaps going all the way around are even. But I have a simple way of showing you how to do that. So this is our project for today, and let's start building. All right, so I have some plywood set up here because I'm working on those two back pieces. Now what's interesting is the back pieces, I just can't cut them square. So take a look at this a second. The back is going to be no problem. I can just glue and nail that together, making a butt joint. But the front, well, my face frame isn't going to line up right. I want my face frame to go across at the 45 degrees. So I'm going to have to cut the plywood like that. Another thing to take note of is you'll notice that they don't line up. The reason for that is I can't have the two side pieces the same size because they have to be different in width. You'll notice that this piece here actually goes into this piece. So I have to make sure I compensate for that. So the first thing I'm going to do is I have my plywood down. I have some sacrificial boards underneath it to support it. And my saw, I've turned to 45 degrees. Now you'll note on the saw that you have a 0 and a 45 degree setting because those are the two most common cuts made with this. And this notch here represents the size of my blade. So I'm going to make sure that this edge of the notch, that's right in line with the blade. So I have to measure from here to the edge of my saw. This is the cut that I actually want to make. So I took that measurement and I put a straight edge on it, and now I'm going to make the cut all the way down the board. All right, now from the plans that are included at the end of this video, I'm going to go back, set my saw back up to 90 degrees, and I'm going to rip cut the two pieces to the sizes on the plans. So I'll do that next, and I'll show you the next step. So I have both my back pieces here, and you'll note this one is wider than that one because, as we mentioned before, it's going to be going behind it. Now I've pre-drilled it because I'm going to nail this on, and I have my glue there. And so I'm going to stand this up. Now I could use a square to check to make sure that this stays at 90 degrees, but I'm not too worried about that because once I place the top and bottom on this, it's going to hold it at my 90 degrees. That'll be the next step. For now, I got to get some nails in here. I have the two back pieces nailed together, and I'm going to be working on this a lot, especially from this direction, so it's kind of an awkward piece to work with. So I made a couple of brackets. It's just some scrap wood, some 2x4 that I cut a notch of 45 in, put a little base on the bottom, and now this will allow me to put it underneath this and hold it more stable. The reason for these brackets, especially right now, is I want to measure for the top and bottom pieces. Now, I have a couple of issues going on here. I wanted at least 12 inches in depth on this. And one would just think, okay, I can grab a 1x12 at the store and put that in there. Well, you'll notice that it comes up considerably short. The other thing I don't like is, even if this was wide enough, I don't like the grain going on that funny angle. I want the grain to be running straight across the shelf. So here's how I fix that. First, I'll lay my 1x12 up here, and I need to measure essentially from the face of this, which is represented here, straight down to the back. Now, I can't use my regular tape measure on this because the tab, it's too big to get down into that corner. A good folding ruler does the trick. And you'll notice now I'm right about 8.5. So that 8.5, what I'll do is I'll measure that here on the board and rip this to 8.5. From there, I can then put my 45-degree cuts on it from the miter saw, and I'll be able to put those in. So let me make a couple of cuts, and I'll show you how that goes together. So I have the shelves all cut now, and I'm putting them in place. Now, the top is pretty simple. The top piece is just going to be flush with the backs. The middle, from the plans, I measured up, I made some marks. And then the bottom is not going to be flush. It also sits up a little bit because of the face frame that goes around, and that's 3.5 inches. Now you're noticing that when I cut these at the 45 on the miter saw, now that I put them in, well, they're not fitting so good. I have kind of a gap on both sides. That's because these back pieces are wanting to kind of like splay outwards. So I want to bring them in so I can nail this. Now if I put a clamp across this, I am definitely going to crush this little corner. So here's how I'm going to do that. I took a scrap piece of wood, and with my jigsaw, I'm going to cut in straight, and then I'm going to cut on a 45, just roughly. Then from there, I can cut it off, and I have these little pieces. So with a pair of them, Slide them on each end. And now with a clamp, I can slowly squeeze this together. All that movement is gone, and I just simply glue and nail this in place. So let me get that done, and then I'm going to move on to making some holes on this for those adjustable shelves. We'll do that next. I've been busy putting in the holes for what will be where the shelves go that's adjustable. Now, getting these holes lined up, it's really important, and it can be kind of tricky to do if you're just going to try and eyeball it. So to make life easy, you can just pick up a shelf pin jig. I got this one at Woodcraft, and it has hole spacings on it every inch. In my case, I'm going to do them every 5 inches. So you can see that when I line this up, I simply can make the holes where I want it and go up as far as I want. And as far as the front, well, then this flips over and it has these guides on it. So the guide will just ride along the front edge of my unit, and again, I can make the holes going all the way up. Now, speaking of the holes, you have to pick up this drill bit, and the drill bit comes in different sizes. In this case, I got a 1/4 inch. Now, the end of this bit fits perfectly into the jig, and the bit, you can set it for the depth you want. This way you're not going to drill all the way through your side piece. All right, let me finish up putting these holes in, and then we're going to move on to the next step. I'm making the face frame for the cabinet now, and the long stiles that run the length of it, well, these have the 45-degree cut on it. And I did these the same manner that I did the plywood. I had a wide board, and with my circular saw, I cut a 45 down it all the way. Then I changed the circular saw, and with a fence, I cut it to the width I needed. However, keep in mind when you're selecting your lumber, you want to try and cut these and avoid the knots in it. Not only is it a weak point, but it's going to make it hard to sand and smooth. So be aware of that. Now when it comes to putting these on, there's a couple of things you want to pay attention to. First of all, I want to make sure that I get the angle on the stile flush with the side. Now I can take my measurement for that bottom piece. However, you're going to want to work your way up the unit because I need another one here in the middle and one for the top. And because this is wood, it can bow or warp a little on you. So you're going to want to readjust it at each spot. Take another measurement and do that for the last one here. Now, after I cut these to length, before I attach them, I'm going to want to put this arch on the top piece and on the bottom one. So I'll show you that once I get these cut. Okay, I've cut out my arch, and I still have to smooth this with a rasp and some sandpaper, but then that'll be done. Now, the way that I made that arch was I found the center of my board and then measured up an inch. With a thin piece of wood, I can put this on here and just simply bow it until it comes up to the mark. And with my pencil, I trace that out. After I cut this one out and sand it, then it's time for me to put some pocket screws on the back side, and then I can put it all together. So I'll get back to you with that step. With all the pocket screws in, you're probably tempted to take your face frame and put it on the unit, but not so fast. This is actually where I'm going to set my door. Let me explain. We want that door to be flush with this face frame, and if you put this on first, it's going to be really awkward trying to hold and measure that door. So this is a lot easier way to do it. To start with, I already went ahead and glued up a couple of boards that are wider and taller than the opening that I have here. I'm going to put this underneath, and I'm going to just put a few spacers underneath the rest of this to lift it up some. Now the next time you're at one of the big box stores, pick up a bunch of these laminate samples. I use them for shims and spacers all the time. And so what I'll do is, I'll place some of these in here. Oops, come on, put you like this. And then with a pencil, I'll take another one and trace around this. So then I'm going to cut and sand right to that line, and then I'll refit it back in the face frame, and we'll see what it looks like. So I've cut the door down, and I went a little heavy on the cut. I didn't go right to the line. That way I could use the block plane to sneak up on it for a fit. So let's see how it is. It's a really nice fit. Now at this point, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my hinges on, pre-drill it and set them there, but I'll take it back off before I put this onto the actual rest of the carcass. It's a whole lot easier to get these set and lined up now than trying to fight with it after it's on there. Now if you're wondering why I have the brass hinge and not the black like on the original there, well the truth is I couldn't find them. So check out the link at the end of the video and figure out how I changed the color of these without using paint. Okay, let me make some holes and get this set, and then I'm going to actually attach the frame to the rest of the carcass. So I have the face frame on the rest of the cabinet, but I don't have it glued or nailed down yet. I also added one more shelf in the middle here because that's where I'm going to mount the magnet for when the door closes. Now, this face frame, as I said, it's going to get glued and then we'll nail it, but if I was to take the nail and drive it straight down, I'm going to punch through to that. So what I have to do is I have to drill on an angle. So I've set my bevel up at 45 degrees and I'm just kind of using the bevel as a reference. And I'll work all the way down the line doing that. After that, I'll take these clamps off, glue it up, nail it on, and I'll move to the next step, which is going to be putting the top on and making that bull nose for the front edge. I have the top piece here, and it's a little bit larger than what the shelves were. So I had to take a 1x12 and glue on an extra 3/4 of an inch. I then went ahead and already cut it for my 90 degrees. Now I want to take this from being square to the round over bullnose that we have on the finished one here. Now I could use my router for that, but there is an easier way. I begin by measuring a 1/4 inch from each edge, and I'm going to draw a line all the way down this. The trick to getting this line is I put the pencil where I want, and then I use my fingers as a fence and just drag it along the board. I also measured a 1/4 inch on the face here, and I'll do the same thing with a pencil line. And one more time on the other side. Now I'll put it in our vise, and with a block plane, I'm first going to make a chamfer. I'm going to have the block plane try and shave right to both those pencil lines. Okay, now that I have the chamfer, I'm going to slowly start trying to round that over. And I'll do the same thing to the other side now. Slowly try and round it over. Okay, now I can still feel the different plane marks on it. So I'll take some sandpaper and slowly work this down till I get a nice smooth round edge to it. Now I'm going to repeat the same procedure for this middle piece of trim. This also has that bull nose or round over edge to it, but it's only 1 inch deep. So what I'll do for that is, on a large board, I'll measure for the 1 inch, and then just like I did with the top piece, I'll use my block plane and create my round over. And then I can go ahead and rip this down. So let me finish this up, and I'll attach the top, and I'll show you how we're going to cut and miter this piece as well as our little cove trim at the top and middle. So we'll be back for that then. I've attached the top, and there's 2 ways that you could do this. I put some glue just in the center and then some nails around it. Because this is a solid wood top, I have to allow for that movement. So with the glue being in the middle, it's going to expand back and forth, and those nails will bend with it. The other way I could have attached it was I could have put some screws through the bottom up into it, but I want to elongate the holes, again, to allow for the movement. Now you'll probably notice that I have this gap here, and that's a result of my side pieces being a little bit longer than the face frame. I kind of saw this mistake when I was attaching it, but I chose to leave the gap at the top because my cove molding that's going to go on there will cover it. Now, I went ahead and mitered the cove molding, and it matches where that length of the top is. Now, I went ahead and for my middle piece of trim, ripped down for this bull nose, and when I put this on here, I want to make sure that when I miter this, that the back, the face frame, and this piece of trim will all line up. Now I can clamp this in place and go down there and make the other mark and make that miter. And then also too, another piece of the cove molding will get mitered and put right up underneath that. Okay, so let me do that. When we come back, I'll have the door on, it buttoned up, and we'll talk about the finish. So I have our corner cabinet all buttoned up, and I went ahead and put the shelves in it too. Now the shelves are going to be cut the same way that we did the top pieces, but I left them a little loose so I can move them around, easier to adjust. Also too, I added our door on there, and when it came to putting the finish on, this is pine, and pine can sometimes be tricky because stain will absorb at different rates and it'll look kind of splotchy. So to help prevent that, I used a gel stain on it. That's more of a surface mounting stain and it'll be more even going across it. And as far as the top coat for some protection, well, I used an amber shellac. I like this because it gives it a little bit more of an antique look to it. And with it being shellac, it dries really quick and I can get multiple coats on in an afternoon. One more thing we're going to show you as an extra to the link at the end of this video is how I'm going to darken these hinges from the brass to making them black without using any kind of paint. So go ahead and check that out. Well, I hope you enjoyed this video. Come back and see what we're building next on another episode of I Can Do That. You mean I could get paid to do this?
No. Oh. That's the problem. Yeah,